coming hot. Yeah.
Love it.
An earphone rattler. Live from an ESG decorated water heater. It's the ESG industry's only weekly woke data podcast featuring analyst ho Matt Moscardi. Ho!
You're talking. We got to do this in the morning more often. You're all amped up.
Pumped up. In today's ESG bedazzled CFO. That's it. Just a bedazzled CFO. I don't know.
Well, there aren't many CFOs anymore, so I'm glad you found one and bedazzled them.
I'll get to this later. Today is called, what is today? January 17th, 2024. Today's show, we talk about boards. We're talking about boards.
B-O-R-E-D, B-O-A-R-D.
So many boards, man. This is a board special just for you. Our show today is being sponsored by FreeFlow Analytics, the only ESG data platform to measure real board influence and diversity power gaps.
Yes.
And you know what?
The crowd loves it. Loves it.
Let's get right into it because our data highlights this first story better than any other data set that you could find in the ESG space.
In history.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you want to get into it? You going to give me a... Do I get a transition? No, the crowd...
Yeah, here.
Okay. Oh, I hate that. I hate that music.
You asked for it.
By the way, before I get to the story, something I was working on before the show, some kind of amalgamation between CFO and UFO, because the CFOs don't last in their jobs anymore. No UFO, unidentified. No one knows who the. You see where I'm going here? No one knows who the CFOs are because they're there for 3 months. They get their golden hello bonus, and then they get their golden parachute. So maybe we could workshop this.
I mean, you could have the CUFO, which is one thing, but if you do the UCFO,
I like where this is going.
It's more. What about the UFCO? Then they're cage fighting.
Can we put this conversation into our pitch deck for potential investors? This very conversation about.
If the listeners haven't turned off now, they won't.
All right, come on, let's get to it. Elon Musk has issued an ultimatum to Tesla's board, hand over control of 25% of the votes, or he'll put the brakes on AI development. Of course, he posted this, Matt, on one of his other companies. It's called X now. It's not Twitter anymore. He said that he would feel uncomfortable expanding the EV company's AI and robotics capabilities without controlling a quarter of the voting bloc. He added that the voting power would make him influential, but ultimately overridable regarding major decisions.
Damien, I have a question for you first. Approximately how influential is Elon Musk on the board, according to FreeFlow Analytics?
Okay, well, what is the number now? 79%? 70%?
70%. And that does not include his brother.
Explain that quickly. What does that number mean, 70%?
All right. So if
quickly,
you've ever
I said...
gone to freeflowanalytics.com, you'll see an influence number for every single director on every single board over years. The influence number represents their resume, their status on the board, their role on the board, and their network connections on the board. It's basically a measure of how powerful that human being is on that board. That's what it is.
And on top of that, Tesla is nothing but him. It's the whole narrative behind Tesla, and the whole reason why the stock price is so overinflated is this incredible unicorn-filled narrative created by the supposed genius of Elon Musk. So that he doesn't. What I'm taking out of this statement is that he doesn't consider himself already influential at Tesla. That's what.
I know.
Right. That's the implication there. So let's talk quickly. Yeah, go ahead.
It's also 8 hymns. Let's talk about who the 8 hymns are.
Let's quickly talk about how the board stands today. There's only 8 board members at Tesla, one of them being Elon Musk. So he already controls.
Like he's got some influence.
He already controls 1/8 of the board. Then you have the chair, Robin Denholm, who's only the chair because the SEC told her to be the chair.
That's
because
correct,
they split. They told Elon he couldn't be the chair because of his all of his stupid twittering he was doing.
I went back through the archives. In fact, Robin Denholm said no to the job because she didn't want it. But it was either her or James Murdoch at the time because they were the only 2 directors who were independent at the time.
Let's talk about James Murdoch. He's a third of 8 directors. He described himself in testimony. Remember, they were suing the board because of their ridiculously huge pay package given to Elon Musk. He described himself in testimony in court as a friend of Elon Musk since 2006. Remember, under oath.
Yeah,
okay,
I know.
so that's a third of 8 directors. Then you have Ira Aaron Price. He is an investor who heads Tesla's compensation committee. He has been close to Musk for years. This is again from the same court case. According to court documents, he helped Elon design that 2018 pay deal, and as a director, he was given almost $10 million in stock options in 2018. So in no ways is he independent, right? I mean, is there a single other director that we can find who's given that much money in stock options and considered independent? That's an executive level salary right there.
Not only that, but he is the founder of a venture firm that invested in Musk early, right? Like, so he's the VC bro.
But
there
again,
in the first place.
I'm going to repeat. According to the New York Times, he has, quote, been close to Mr. Musk for years. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
And received $10 million in pay just to sit on the board.
I mean, that helps. They were already close. They were already watching football games together. The $10 million was just extra.
So that's the fourth. I haven't even gotten to numbers 5 and 6, Matt. Well, one of them is the Tesla co-founder and the CTO for 14 years, JB Straubel. He's also on the board. I'm serious. One of the co-founders and former executive, JB Straubel. Matt, number 6 is a true laugher. Can you believe I waited for this guy for number 6? It's a guy named Kimball Musk.
There you go.
Elon's brother. That's after I talked about all those others, and then finally
some independents.
There might be 2 independents. Kathleen Wilson Thompson. I'm just going to say I'm going to go out on a limb and say is independent. I'm not going to talk about her. The 7th director, Joe Gebbia.
Yeah.
Now you're making a claim that he's not really independent. Why? Why is he not really independent?
All right. So Joe Gebbia looks independent. He's Airbnb's co-founder. Mm-hmm. But I looked at the Airbnb board, and on the Airbnb board is a member from Sequoia who funded virtually every single Musk endeavor. Jeff Jordan from Andreessen Horowitz, who Mark Andreessen and Musk are like libertarian bros, right? Like they basically love each other. And the CFO of Block, which is owned by Jack Dorsey, who is another bro who Musk bought Twitter from. So the people around Joe Gebbia, who Joe Gebbia chose, would suggest that Joe Gebbia at least is in the orbit of Musk or knows of him or has run into him. You know, they must have done mushrooms together somewhere, right?
But even without him, you have 2 friends, you have a brother, you have a co-founder, you have Elon. That's 5 out of the 8 votes right there. This is the guy who thinks he's not influential and is now blackmailing his own company essentially to get more voting power.
But that to me isn't the worst part.
Okay, go ahead.
The worst part about the whole thing is that so first of all, it's a classified board, meaning there's only like 2 to 3 directors that come up per year. Mm-hmm. Joe Gebbia was added to the board at the end of 2022, but because of the class of director he actually doesn't get a vote from investors until this year. So he's been on the board for 2 years.
Yeah, he gets to sit around for a while, twiddling his thumbs.
Before he even has investors even get a say, which is a joke in and of itself. But then when investors get a say, the lowest vote total has been 60-some percent, 68%, I believe.
It's pretty low.
For Robin Denholm, which is pretty low.
Yeah, for one of the women.
But she's the chair, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody likes the chair. They're all blaming her for stuff. Meanwhile, Kimball Musk got an 80% for vote the last time he was up.
Yeah.
Elon Musk's brother, who's 1/8 of the board,
and has expertise in nothing,
80% for vote.
Yeah.
He eats at Chipotle and wears a cowboy hat. What are we talking about? Like, for expertise, there is no expertise there, and investors have effectively allowed themselves to get held hostage by not voting against him. In fact, if you want to blame somebody, like, you blame the investors for not voting, but blame ISS and Glass Lewis for not actually looking at free flow analytics data and saying this is one of the most compromised boards of any board. And we
I was
talk
gonna
about
say,
boards all day.
You're talking about an ISS and Glass Lewis that will vote against you if you've attended 73% of board meetings, or if you're sitting on 3 other boards, like stuff like that, like little checkmark box cup type of stuff. But they won't vote against you if they're helping the CEO and co-founder consolidate an unusual amount of power.
I mean, to me, it's actually it's truly insane that when J.B. Straubel came up as an appointee on the board, that there was like actual quibbling over whether or not he was independent enough, and they said vote for, like, one, I think Glass Lewis or ISS said vote for, and the other one said vote against. To me, like, the fact that we're even having a debate about that is absurd on its face. A guy who worked with Elon Musk for 14 years at the company where he would be on the board while the brother's on the board and Elon's on the board and their funders on the board. What are we saying? At what point do we say, like, Musk has enough influence, and yet somehow Musk has managed to say, I need 25% of the shares. What he needs the shares for is actually to buy back the debt of Twitter.
Yeah,
has nothing to do with
he
AI.
sold a bunch of shares to buy
He had
Twitter,
to
right?
sell to buy Twitter.
So what's the end of the story here, Matt? Is this his way to leave? We speculated for a long time that he's going to step down as CEO of Tesla. Is this his way out if they don't give in to his demands?
I mean, it could be his excuse. For leaving,
right? Exactly.
Right? Like, and then he could blame the board, who he handpicked.
But more likely,
his
they're just going to
brother.
give him what he wants, and this is a non-story anyway.
So it's win-win for him, right?
Yep.
Like, if they go to him and say no, then he can leave. In fact, they probably in backdoor channels are brokering a deal as we speak. Which
probably
is to
converting some of his shares into super voting shares, I'm guessing.
There could be a million ways they could do this, but they could actually say, do you want us to give you this pay package or not? Like,
Right.
do you want to step down? And this is his quote unquote graceful exit. Right? Like, Tesla can be its own company. He doesn't have the headaches that he has with the SEC anymore. He can run his other 7 companies by himself and make flamethrowers and dig holes and go to space. Maybe he'll dig holes in space with a flamethrower. Who knows?
We've got 3 other boards to talk about. Let's move on. Enough of Elon Musk.
I'm tired.
Yeah, ultimatum. Boeing. Oh, one of your favorite boards, Boeing. Boeing's board faces scrutiny yet again, of course. I'm going to remind everyone that only 3 years ago, 2021, Boeing's board paid a hefty $250 million fine to settle a shareholder lawsuit that accused it of failing in its fiduciary duty to monitor safety and initially lying about its response to the first of 2 fatal 737 MAX 8 crashes. Okay, let's not forget that as a backdrop. Nell Minow, friend of the show, Nell Minow, she came out to say that the board is a serial offender that doesn't learn from past mistakes. She says it's a bad board. And it has been a bad board for a long time.
It is a bad board.
Yeah. Part of the problem that she points out that is interesting to me is that she says that the board doesn't have enough pressure to change. Now, she doesn't mention shareholder pressure because they certainly haven't pushed anyone out. But she says because Boeing is part of a duopoly with Airbus, it doesn't really have any incentive to change, right? It's just 2 competitors there, Airbus and Boeing. And she says that given the company's market dominance, the board has allowed Boeing to put financial and not aviation engineering first. So she's saying that the board is able to focus on finances because, again, it's part of this duopoly.
Well, look, we have chronicled ad nauseum on this show that no one listens to, all the cronyism on the Boeing board, right?
You want to get right to the board?
No, what I want to say about the board is none of this is new. As in, even the refreshments, we're not investigative journalists. We spend 7 minutes doing fact-based research to figure out, this person knows this person from this place. It's not really that hard. And yet, investors...
I feel devalued.
But investors... 90% plus for votes for every director on this board year in and year out. 90%.
They did find this article in Fortune did find someone who actually likes the Boeing board, other than the 94% of shareholders. And her name is Joellen Posner, Associate Professor of Management at Santa Clara University's Levy School of Business. She says she applauds the company for adding aviation and risk experts while replacing directors with financial, government, and trade expertise. She says, if I were putting together a board for Boeing, this is what I would choose. Now, I looked into, I decided to look into the who are the 6 new directors since the 2 fatal crashes only a few years ago. And let's not forget that one of the ways they dealt with these governance changes was to appoint their own lead independent director who's been part of the company culture for about 15 years to CEO. That's Dave Calhoun. That is one of the ways they dealt with this. Okay.
Yes, that is how they fix this problem.
So there are 6 new directors, and I will say that while yes, there are 3 of them who seem to have a background in safety, including Stacey Harris, former Inspector General of the Air Force. 3 of them, Matt. One is a finance expert from KPMG. One is basically a former CFO from UTC and Paul Corporation. And then there's the former CEO at Qualcomm, the semiconductors company. So 3 of them know nothing about safety, and somehow magically they've been appointed since this board turnover.
But look, no one ever got hurt by a computer chip, so that's how they know.
But it shows that by maintaining the past old guard, by promoting Dave Calhoun, that nothing has changed there. You're still not highlighting safety over finance, right? You appointed Lynn Dowdy, a finance expert from KPMG. That was one of the choices after 2 fatal crashes.
Well, wait, that's normal playbook, isn't it? Isn't that the playbook that you add? You always have the accountant on the board.
They already have plenty of accountants. And,
I'm just making sure they have enough, right?
I mean, to Nell's point, they already had that. They already have people on the board who help them make money better.
Can we get Joellen Posner and Nell Minow on this show for a debate about whether or not Boeing is a good board and why? Right?
We can try.
Let's do it.
Okay. And can I just, this one throwaway about Boeing that I just want to remind the audience, this incredible coincidence. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader, Matt, you're going to stop laughing now. On the second Boeing 737 MAX 8 crash, his grandniece died on that plane. Consumer advocate Ralph Nader, and he rightly called for the entire board to resign. So there you go. That's just a strange coincidence here in this Boeing board story that his grandniece was on that plane, one of those planes.
But the fact is, I'm tired of the Boeing board. They're like that we started this company because we realized they were not. When the MAX 8 planes fell out of the sky, we went to the story and said not who was on the board that greenlit the MAX 8 planes, but how did they get there? How does this board get chosen? How does a bunch of people in a room all decide to raise their hand and say, I agree, greenlight this plane that cuts corners and maximizes profit, and we're in a profit race with Airbus, don't do it right, whatever the case may be, right? We asked how, not who in that case. And still, to this day, the board is effectively constructed the same exact way that board was constructed. That board all knew the head of the nominating committee from his lobbying group. This board, they all know Dave Calhoun from various places. Mm-hmm. It's all constructed through a network of fist bumps and bros. So I don't know what more there is to say about this. Nell is right. This is how boards usually get built, which is the tragedy. This is how investors tend to vote, which is 90% for every single one of them without doing any due diligence. And this is what happens when the board is greenlighting things that can come out of the sky and kill you. This is what happens when it's like, there's actual safety problems. This is Norfolk Southern. This is Boeing. They're all the same. So I'm tired of it. Let's do something else. Let's never talk about Boeing again.
You think is that possible?
No, we'll probably talk about them tomorrow.
Yeah, let's not forget that the chair of the board is a man named Lawrence Kellner. He has been on the board since 2011.
Yeah. No, he's independent.
And he is in a leadership position with Dave Calhoun, who is also one of the old guard.
Yep.
I mean, nothing has changed on this board, and yet in this round, thankfully no one has died yet. But in this round of horrible accidents, I don't hear anyone calling for Dave Calhoun to step down or the chair. What about just the chair, Larry Kellner? There since 2011. How did he last through the first round? I don't even know how he's still there.
The question has to be asked. If you are voting 90% for every one of these directors and Dave Calhoun, you are giving a vote of confidence to management. Is this what you want as an investor? Because this isn't the first time now. This is a continuation of the same problem. These planes don't get built yesterday. These planes get built over a decade, and they get built poorly, and then they fall out of the sky. In fact, when you do the post-mortem, a board that makes a decision in 2011, the average board tenure is 7 to 10 years, which means most of the board had already flipped off by the time the planes are in the sky, and there's no accountability for them then. So when you get pissed off because, you have a shitty outcome, you voted for it 10 years ago. If you do the analytics now on the board, maybe you avoid the shitty thing 10 years from now that will cost you money.
Also, Kellner sits on the board of ExxonMobil. And he also sits on the safety committee at Boeing. There you go. Another guy who's been there since 2010 is Ronald Williams, who was the former CEO of Aetna, the healthcare company. So thank God he's still there, providing his expertise.
He's the Ed Liddy old guard. MetLife was Ed Liddy, and Aetna and MetLife are closer related orgs. I think they all know each other. So
congratulations.
This is just fist bumps.
Moving on, Disney rejects Nelson Peltz's push for a board seat. So Disney has a new filing in its proxy contest. Here's a quote from the filing. In deciding not to, there's a mic drop moment here, which I like. In deciding not to recommend Mr. Peltz, the directors considered a number of factors, including that in a 2-year quest for a seat on the Disney board, Mr. Peltz has not actually presented a single strategic idea for Disney. I like that one.
I like that too, yeah.
But here, in a surprise move, because this is something that we reported on, I don't think we saw it really going this way, Disney also rejected 3 board nominees put forward by investor firm Blackwell's Capital, because Blackwell said that their directors would support Bob Iger, but Disney doesn't want them either. And here's their reason for that, Matt. They say that they lack experience as directors of large public companies. What do you think about that?
Please get over it. Yeah. Like that's worked out really well for you, Disney. Oh, P.S. One of the people on your board, if you look at the history of the Disney board, there were directors who lacked director experience on the Disney board in the past, but now that's the qualification. Now they have to have been on another board.
I'm a little surprised by this. One of them was a former Warner Brothers executive, Jessica Schell. There was also a real estate executive, Craig Hackoff, who co-founded the Tribeca Film Festival with Robert De Niro. I guess I just would have assumed that since they were going to support Bob Iger, that they could use them. But I don't know. Maybe Bob wants his own people.
Yes. That is correct.
That's your okay. That's your takeaway.
There you go. That's my takeaway.
So that's the craziness going over at Disney. And finally, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, speaking of big board stories. See how I did 4 big board stories here?
Ooh, I saw that. Look at that.
Sam Altman opens up about being fired by the board. I love how he's always portrayed as some kind of victim in this situation.
Just be quiet.
So Altman said that the night he was pushed out by the board was, quote, wild. And he felt, quote, super confused.
Oh.
And was, quote, super caught off guard.
Oh. Honestly, this is I don't think, what is this about? Why are we asking him questions about it?
Okay, this is what I want to talk about. So they're asking him about the board structure, because ultimately it was the board structure in any board, the board has the oversees management and has the right to fire the CEO. So
of course.
Nobody should be surprised by this, except the
blah.
Except the fact in America, I think everyone is always surprised if the board fires a CEO. Right? That's the takeaway: is that I have the power. I'm the CEO. I'm the king.
Yeah.
How dare you do your job, even though it's part of the bylaws?
Your
you
job is
cannot
to do what I
oversee
tell
me.
you to.
Yes.
That's what.
But here's what he said. He said about this board structure, he said, but this is the structure, and I immediately just went to go thinking about what I was going to do next. It was not until some board members called me the next morning that I even thought about really coming back. And he says, but like the board did have all the power there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Had.
But but that's the way the structure was set up.
They're your boss.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that the board effectively represents shareholders or another stakeholder and elects management. So they're management's boss. That seems correct. So being surprised that the board has the power,
Not to
seems
mention
like you didn't know what a board was.
Not to mention that he was doing numerous things that were against the mission and the whole purpose of the company to begin with.
Don't worry. We got rid of all the women who were worried about that.
So he was asked whether OpenAI would reform this board structure and become a traditional Silicon Valley for-profit company. And he was adamant that his startup would not do that. He said, we'll never be a traditional company. But he says, but the structure, I think we should take a look at the structure. Maybe the answer we have now is right, but I think we should be willing to consider other things. He's just talking. This is like CEO gobbledygook. He added that now was not the time to reconsider company structure. He said the focus was on the board first. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I guess getting in people that were favorable to him. He says,
yeah.
He says, I think one of the things that's difficult to fix for us about OpenAI is the degree to which our team and the people around us invest in us or whatever are committed to this mission. I mean, he is just full of. First of all, he's a perfect kind of millennial, I guess, because I just don't understand a word he's talking about. There's a lot of supers, a lot of whatevers. He talks in circles. He agrees with things that he doesn't agree with. He likes structures that do their jobs and fire him, but then he gets confused that they fired him and doesn't think they should have fired him, and now he wants to replace them. He's a very confusing despot, is he not?
But look, every single tech bro has come out and said AI could be the most destructive force that humans
including
have ever
him
created.
repeatedly. He really actually says the most things about how worried he is about it destroying the world.
But like people who are naturally destructive, like Elon Musk likes to like go in and make capricious decisions, are worried about the destructive nature of AI, the potential destructive nature of AI. So much so that you just pulled a headline about OpenAI is not going to work on any campaigning. They're like removing themselves from all election activity. They won't allow any
unlike
of it
Facebook, yeah.
But they're legitimately worried about the negative consequences of the thing they've built. So in advance of that, they built a structure that attempts to avoid those negative consequences.
Yes.
It doesn't seem more complicated than that.
No, I know. And this is why, is he feigning confusion? I mean, he likes the structure. He doesn't like the structure. He doesn't think we should focus on the structure. And yet he wants new board members because one of the women they fired she's a scholar from MIT who does her research on the very thing
ethics
you were just referring to.
And boards.
AI ethics.
AI rather.
Yeah. But she is one of the people that he wasn't comfortable with because she voted against him. And you also have a company where reportedly 98% of the staff are on his side. So there are absolutely no checks and balances if that's the case, right? There's not a single voice that contradicts what's in his brain.
No, I think there was properly a check and balance.
The board.
And I think the board. I think, and now
it's ridiculed now worldwide for doing a dumb thing.
It's incredible that we're writing this narrative that the board was the one that fucked up.
Whereas, and the reason why I picked this story today is because it's the only board out of Disney, Boeing, Tesla doing its job, doing it well,
its job.
To the letter of its mission, of its mandate, exactly.
And I think actually the fear here is a much more basic fear. Sam Altman you covered like 2 weeks ago. He's buying houses in Hawaii or something,
everywhere,
right?
everywhere.
I mean, these are people who are at constant odds with themselves about the amount of money at stake, the amount of, we're out there fundraising right now, right? Like we are looking for investors in what we do. And it is incredibly difficult because we have a mission with what we want to achieve. We want to talk about these boards. We want to fix the market for these boards. When we talk about these things, we want to use actual data and analytics to measure the effectiveness of these boards, not pretend we do, right?
And we want we want the narrative to point to these boards. We want people to understand how they work. We want people to know who is on the board, and we want you to be able to when you're talking about these corporations to talk about the people that matter, right?
If you can remember the name of the backup left tackle on the Green Bay Packers, you should know the names of the boards of the companies where you shop, because they're the ones who are your check and balance.
Or if you're one of the many Americans who's increasingly, irritated, angry, upset, embarrassed by the actions of Elon Musk, how about at a minimum knowing that his brother, who knows nothing about anything, is sitting on that publicly traded company board? His brother.
Forget Musk. If you don't believe with the politics of the company, I don't care if you think the company's woke or not woke. If you can't name a board member, you don't know who you to be angry at. Knowing the person's name and how they perform and what they actually do and say is important. And we're out there looking for investors to invest in this mission, right? Like that's what we want to do. But it's very hard because investors come at you and they say, well, we kind of like that, but we really like this. And they want you to focus on another thing, right? Like they want you to build what they're interested in. And if you're Sam Altman and you know that AI is a potentially destructive force on humanity, but investors are saying, yeah, but what if this will make $1 trillion? I want you to do that.
Yeah.
You want to buy the house in Hawaii. It's really hard to tell that investor, no, that's against the mission, because they won't invest anymore. And suddenly you're out in the cold. So this is the tiptoe game. But the reason the board exists is to say, Sam, I know you want all that money. We know we need the money, but you cannot destroy humanity to get the money. That's not the mandate and mission of this company. That's it. It's not that complicated.
As a sidebar, he doesn't actually own any equity in OpenAI, and he made all that money even not at OpenAI.
Yeah,
so he doesn't even need any extra money from OpenAI.
Like somehow he got it.
Somehow. And by the way, the news I'm getting on the street, Matt, is that the reason why investors are hesitant and people, and investment funds are hesitant to use our data is that they don't want to be uncomfortable at dinner parties.
Yeah.
If one of the directors is there, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. There's a social tension. There's not
social tension.
If we treated boards like sports teams, you don't have the same social tension. You're not worried about that. But you're worried about it because you're going to go to the golf club later on and you might see XYZ board member there who you just voted against. But this is easier to do if you have data that says,
they won't
look,
know.
I gave you 12 years to perform. You underperformed your market peers on earnings, TSR. We didn't even talk about like the fact that these board members at Tesla are all, and you may think of Tesla as like, stock to the moon, whatever, bullshit. They're all average. They are absolutely 100%, almost all across the board, average performers for earnings and TSR. Where the average director in like their peers, they're just average. That includes Kimball Musk. And Elon himself is just average.
But
that's what the data says. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in the tenure that we have up for their board, positions versus their peers, it turns out actually over time, they're just average.
Yeah, which is why it's important to focus on the main takeaway of Boeing, Disney, and Tesla, and that is that they are using their boards as a means of consolidating CEO power, which is, again, not the purpose of these boards. And to your point, using our data to discover the fact that a lot of them are just average in the first place, it should give shareholders incentive to vote on people who actually have a skill set that represents their shareholder values, right?
We've just generated,
or a background or a whatever.
I just worked on this yesterday. I'm generating a list of mid-cap, small-cap directors who have been on multiple mid-cap, small-cap boards who outperform their peers. You basically have a minor league of directors that you can just bring up and put them on large-cap boards because they have experience in doing things that you want as an investor. Look, we're the cloud cover for you to make a decision that might be socially awkward for you or difficult to explain because you meet these directors, you might know them. There's just data.
Hey.
Like, if their stock underperformed, you'd happily vote people out. But you can vote them out before the stock underperforms and put together a team that might avoid that.
Hey, if you haven't seen the show Survivor, I apologize. But just do what they do on Survivor. After you vote somebody out, just lie about it. Just say, oh, it wasn't me. It was Glass Lewis that voted you out. It wasn't us.
And you should do it while holding a tiki torch.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. Just lie. You probably lie about other things in your life. Lie about who you're voting out.
That's our
vote
show.
Them out. That's the point. Vote them out.
That's Hazelnut Rawless. I am your analyst, Matt Mascardi. We are Free Float. This was your Woke Wednesday show. We've got a proxy countdown tomorrow. It might be a little on the late side. We got a Friday wrap-up show. I think Chantel might try to join us. Maybe. I don't know. Intern Chantel might try to join again. Who knows? But until then, goodbye.